to infinity and beyond.
This is me. This is how I win.
Were you rushing or were you dragging? Answer!
You're a wizard, Harry.
Say what again? Say what again? I dare you.
No, I am your father.
Hasta la vista, baby.
Are you not entertained? Are you not entertained?
And here we go.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back inside the film room. Zach Goins here, Johnny Sobchak here, and a very special guest. You know him, you love him. He's back again, Mr. Sean Jacob Lawler. Welcome back to the podcast, Jake.
Hello.
Oh, classic. We had to. You pulled that out of nowhere. It's only right.
Only right.
So it would be a big event. You know, it's episode 99. It was so close to bringing Jake back for the grand 100, but, you know, maybe we'll have something up our sleeve. We'll see what's happening, but still going to be a great episode today. We've got a review of Judas and the Black Messiah, one of the best movies in the last 2 years, maybe. Definitely in the last calendar year, I guess. Yeah. That's not the right terminology. In the last 12 months.
The fiscal year.
And in the, from the second quarter to the third quarter. No, Judas and the Black Messiah review. Jake is back because he feels very passionately about that movie, as he should, because it's a wonderful movie. And we're also talking WandaVision episode 6. And we'll have to get Jake's thoughts on that because, you know, Johnny and I have been breaking that down week by week. Jake, we know Jake's thoughts, but interested if you want to share some stuff with the folks. But first off, guys, just what's going on? How's it going? We got the crew back together.
Jake, I'll let you take the floor.
It's been good. I have also recently moved into a new apartment, so I'm in Westwood now. So it's much nicer than the hellscape I was in before.
Your place looked so nice initially. You were so excited about it.
Yeah, it was nice, and then you walk outside and it looks like you're in a steel mill. So I was not a fan of that every morning. But no, it's been good. So that's nice. And then when was the last time I was? October was the last time I was on here, right?
Yeah, I think so.
Somewhere around there, yeah.
So Connor and I, our short film is coming out this week. February.
After the world premiere. Last time you were on was before the world premiere.
Yeah, so we premiered at that Film Fest 919, and then we're doing a social media online release for everybody to check out this Friday, February 20th. So we're really excited to share that with everyone. I gotta flex real quick that Johnny and I got the screeners. The screener.
The publicist hit us up, was being very generous, gave the press an early look, and I've got to say all good things. You know, it's still under embargo, but 2 thumbs up.
We could do a possible review on that later. But then I got a promotion at my job, which was really cool, and then. I just watched Clue with my girlfriend off of Johnny's recommendation.
Excuse me, girlfriend. That's you're just gonna breeze by. You're talking about all these big life changes, and then you don't even mention that. You just kind of subtly throw that in there.
Yes.
We can't just make fun of Johnny for being the only one who constantly brings up having a girlfriend on the podcast now.
That is true. I do have a girlfriend, and I love her, and she is amazing. And yes. So so it's all 3 of us are off the market now.
Hey.
You know, it's the post-Valentine's episode. We're all locked up. I mean, most of this has been pretty long term, but Jake, welcome to the club.
Oh, thanks. I'm happy to be here. So.
I'm happy you're happy.
We watched Clue last night off of Johnny's recommendation, which is a remarkable movie and not what I expected at all. So
yeah, Yeah.
You will be surprised to know that your boy has in fact seen that.
What?
And I saw it before both of you.
Oh my
Yeah,
God.
I watched that like as a kid growing up. I haven't seen it in a long time since then, so you guys definitely have more of the critical analysis. But I remember liking it a lot, and my brother loved it. But
I feel like it
very,
is one. I feel like it is one of those probably niche family movies that like always circulates because it feels like it once it gets in your household, it's probably one of those things you always show other people.
Yeah.
we had it on DVD. I know, like
So,
back when like you used to just like most people would just like buy DVDs for everything, you know, not like us, like where we still buy Blu-rays and stuff, but like it was
Yeah.
more of a
You
broad
didn't
thing.
have like the streaming capabilities that you have now, where if you want to watch something, you just look it up.
Right.
But yeah, I know Reagan had watched, her grandmother, I guess, had shown it to her. She'd watched it with her like however many years ago, and then she just loves mystery movies, and so she's always like itching to watch one of those. And she found out that I hadn't seen it, so then
That's a rare win for
Yeah.
the girlfriends of this group.
Yeah. I quickly got dragged into it. I was like, okay, I'm down to watch it. And then I was just like, wow, I didn't know much about it. I mean, it was based on the board game, but Tim Curry and just the whole cast and like the way they pulled it off, it's a wild, like there's really nothing else I can really compare it to. But it's very good. If you haven't seen it, absolutely recommend checking it out because it's an oldie, but a goodie.
Rare board game to film success there. I mean, it's more of like a cult class. It wasn't like a giant success, but like I'm trying to think of other like Battleship.
would we consider Jumanji? I mean, because Jumanji
That's
was
true.
a movie,
Was
and it
the
Yeah.
same thing with Zathura? That was like Jumanji in space.
Yeah.
But were those
No.
like, was the Jumanji board game invented because of the movie?
it was merchandise off of the movie.
So it wasn't like it's not
Yeah.
like you're taking like Chutes and Ladders and turning it into a movie or something.
I'd love to see the plot they would come up with.
That's a fun.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure Monopoly movie still works as well. So
That'd be cool. I mean, I guess Monopoly is like Wolf of Wall Street, or
There is not board game, but Tetris. They're making that Tetris movie.
yeah,
And I remember being
natural.
I was absolutely shocked when I realized that it was like about the person who made Tetris and not like the movie Pixels, where it's like the characters are Tetris pieces or something.
Oh, I forgot all about that Pixels movie.
they're making a Dungeons and Dragons movie too.
Yeah,
The board game.
that'll actually be good. I think
Yeah.
the goat Chris
Well-
starring in that. So
Chris Pine.
Yeah.
Respect. We all appreciate the goat Chris in this group. Well, I mean, we just heard Jake is crushing life, just like absolutely just flourishing out in LA. Johnny, what's going on with you?
On the movie side of things, I haven't been going too crazy over the last week, just because I've been super busy. But I rewatched If Beale Street Could Talk, which I hadn't seen since theaters, and I showed it to Reagan as well because she hadn't seen it, and I loved it even more than I did the first time I saw it. I think I appreciated it a little bit more. I mean, I thought it was amazing the first time I saw it, to be fair, but it really like hit differently, and she loved it. I think getting to watch it with her made it a little bit more special as well. But yeah, if you haven't seen that, I feel like that one kind of didn't necessarily get overlooked when it came out, but like especially with like Oscars and like all, those kinds of things, like people it didn't get the buzz it probably deserved.
All-time score by Nicholas Breitel.
Yeah, no question. And then first time watch, Reagan decided she picked yet again, and she picked An American Werewolf in London. And neither of us had seen it. She was kind of itching to watch a horror movie, and I don't think either of you have seen it.
I haven't. My dad loves it though.
Yeah.
Nope.
Okay. I know Josh has seen it, but it's like I'm not going to say too much about it because you really should go into it as blindly as possible. But it's definitely worth a watch. And as far as werewolf movies go, I'm not too familiar with many other ones. Honestly, I know this is one of the more famous ones, more well received films. But yeah, it's wild. And yeah, John Landis. He might have killed some kids with that helicopter, but damn, he made a good werewolf movie. So, hey, you take your victories where you can get them. And
It sounds like I have some Googling to do to figure out what that's about.
um, but then also on the personal front, I guess Zach's been kind of boosting me and helping me. And I think I'm gonna get a little bit of a gig over here, not related to journalism or reporting, writing, anything like that.
But does it pay you money?
It pays me money. It pays me more money than I have been getting paid. So I'm definitely down. It's exciting. I'll be doing something in a local school here where I live in Fayetteville with my family. So just something to do, and kind of get back into a somewhat regular schedule. And of course, I'll still be doing inside the film room on the side. So yeah, I'm excited. Some
Johnny
things
loves the kids.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, well, you guys over here with all your big life developments. Meanwhile, I watched Spider-Verse again. That's the biggest thing for me. No, classic, always great.
So
good to revisit. And I've also watched Saint Maud, which we'll be talking about in a couple weeks.
So jealous.
And you guys are very. I think you guys will like it way more. I enjoyed it, but I think you guys will both like it way more than I did. I got Johnny. This is for you. I got some very First Reformed vibes, and you know my feelings about First Reformed.
Yeah.
And I know your feelings were much more positive than mine there. So that's kind of the association there.
Yeah,
or was that
you made
were
that
you,
comparison?
Did you love First Reformed, or was that Josh?
Josh loves First Reformed. I was definitely more mixed on it. I'd say I was kind of like down the middle. I thought it was kind of like mediocre, but there were things in it that I thought were really, really good. Ethan Hawke, I think, primarily among them. But yeah, I wasn't crazy about that movie at all.
Well, then I rescind that. You still liked it more than me, but
Yeah, probably. Yeah.
But yeah, that's really all that's been going on with me. Nothing too crazy. Had a nice, relaxing steak dinner that I whipped up for Valentine's Day with my honey. Other than that, nothing too big going on.
Hey, well, sometimes that's a good thing. Just chilling, thriving.
That's true. Just working away. But let's get into this podcast now that we're all caught up. But WandaVision episode 6 today came out on Friday. We're working our way through this. We've only got 3 episodes left at this point. Does it feel kind of fast, or I feel like, at least for me, I was like, okay, wow, we're almost done with that. Any similar feelings there?
Jake, you can go.
Yeah, I think like I said when we were talking about it, it's gotten better very quickly, in my estimation, and especially I think with the development, because you're watching the first couple episodes and you're like, how the hell did they spend $25 million an episode? And now you're beginning to realize how they spent $25 million an episode. But I've been really happy with Paul Bettany and Elizabeth Olsen and their chemistry, and their performances have been pretty remarkable. And I think they've probably been really happy with it too, because this is really the first iteration where they both get a real chance to flex who they are and what they're capable of as actors. And they've been doing a tremendous job. Really, everyone in the sitcom, I think, has been doing a really good job. And I think with the recent developments of this episode, and Johnny, I think he said that it has to stick to landing in order to be like worthwhile, and I think that's a very valid point. But it's gotten better very quickly, and the last episode I thought was really good. So
yeah. I'm going to point out real quick that I heard the people in the sitcom are doing well as far as the performances and everything. Is that are you teasing something? Some feelings that you have, Jake?
Yeah, I would say that there are either much better actors in one section, or there are much better direction in one section than the other.
Okay, that's fair. Well, it's funny too, because I noticed, or I think I read somewhere that one person directed all of the episodes.
Yeah,
which is interesting. It's
not a Mando.
Yeah, it's not what you usually see from these sorts of shows. But I also know at the same time they kind of approached, at least I think they did, the production of it for more like as kind of like a one big film.
Yeah, I think it's a continuity thing,
yeah, and I think also like even the budget you were talking about, like the total budget is close to 200 million or whatever it is, but each individual episode probably didn't cost 25, 30, whatever it is. But yeah, it's I was talking about in the group chat, just like I'm enjoying it. Like there's no doubt. And I think, the concept has been executed pretty well. Like it's done what it said it was gonna do. Um I just I'm just really hoping that, like, again, I said I think this show is more about the destination than like the journey necessarily. And I'm sure people disagree with that, and I don't think that's necessarily what they intended. But like, while I'm enjoying it and like seeing the characters kind of do something different from what we've seen in the past, and getting these new elements of Scarlet Witch like explored in the universe, because that's a lot of stuff coming from the comics that they haven't even like hinted at before. I just hope that where it ends up and how things kind of resolve, if there even is something like that, because of course this is going to carry over into the movies and all that. I just hope that, like, because it's a mystery, really. Like at the end of the day, because you're not sure, why is she doing this? Is there anyone else like behind the scenes involved, kind of manipulating her? There's all these Mephisto theories and discussions going on. I feel like at this point, if there isn't something like that, or if it isn't something that's like satisfactory, like if the head of Sword is the bad guy, like that would be kind of lame. I feel
It
like
can't be. It can't be. That would be such a swing and a miss that like Marvel's better than that. Disney's better than Feige is better than that. Like, that's not. They know what they've got here with like the fandom and just like the expectations and the scale and stuff, that it can't. That's probably like, if anything, what they're doing, of just like trying to do like a misdirect of making it like obvious that like this is the guy, but then it's actually going to be Agnes, or it's actually going to be somebody else, or like we have never to this point in the Marvel era, the MCU era, gotten a reason not to trust them to like, obviously there's like the Thor Dark Worlds or the lesser movies like that just kind of like rank at the bottom, but there's never been anything where it's like, damn, they really missed on that one, right?
Yeah, I definitely get that to an extent. I just think, like, as much as I have enjoyed it, I hope that these next 3 episodes, and I know there's been kind of also theories of like a secret 10th episode or whatever people have been speculating about.
I heard that.
I just hope that like they are the best episodes. You know what I mean? Like, I really hope that they, as they're in the home stretch, they really kind of like hit all the right beats.
And if the last episode is any indication, and also the last like 2 episodes were any indication, I do think that it is going to start becoming what people wanted it to be initially. Yeah. And does anyone have any guesses on who the Luke Skywalker cameo is?
We've talked a little bit,
right? Yeah,
like the different theories of like a Magneto or like whether, and like you and I talked about it, Jake, one-on-one, of like whether it's going to be Fassbender or McKellen, and Johnny and I talked about that on the pod. But Magneto or Professor X, or even, as I mentioned before we got started, I've seen just different like theories that Reed Richards is going to be introduced, a pre-superpowers Reed Richards, because there's like the that Monica had mentioned knowing like an astrophysicist or something, the one who they were leaving town to go and meet up with so that he could help. And that there's just like, obviously, as Johnny may be tired of it, but the hype of the like people fan casting John Krasinski or Emily Blunt or anything, that like you wouldn't have to say Reed Richards. You wouldn't have, this is what, if you watch the Brandon Davis from Comic Book, he like posted a video about this, and it was like, John Krasinski could literally just like pop up on the screen, and like, you don't have to say anything. You don't have to show any powers. You don't even have to mention Fantastic Four, and like people just know, that could be like a level of cameo, whether you like it or not. Like, I feel like that would achieve that anticipation or excitement from what's to come.
Yeah, I think that'd be fair, especially in the respect that you're not, while there may have been like a small hint or two, it's not something you really would expect necessarily.
I will also say though that my only piece of evidence against that is something that we had also previously said on one of the first couple episodes, when they were talking about, or I guess it was maybe like the 3rd episode, when they were talking about the blip, that he mentioned, I've got astronauts in space that I haven't heard from, or that are missing or something. And we were like, is that a backdoor Fantastic Four mention? Yeah. So if that were to be the thing, and then Reed Richards is here on Earth, then it doesn't obviously work. So maybe it's not him.
I think at this point I'm going to be, and this is 100% my fault, but I'm going to be upset if it isn't Magneto because like I'm thinking about it nonstop and like
You love Magneto too.
I just have this idea that like the sword head has like a clear shot at Wanda and like takes a shot and then the bullet just stops and then like the camera pans up and it's like Michael Fassbender like hovering in the sun.
Let's
Unreal.
The thing too on the pod last week is that you mentioned that we were discussing different theories and like I could see, of course, Evan Peters' Quicksilver is a character that everyone liked and thought, that's a good adaptation. That's a good, his performance and the way he portrays it and everything. And I feel like the same could be said for Fassbender's Magneto. Like everyone loves him as Magneto. Like no one would be mad if they were to have him as a carryover from the Fox movies. And I think he would fit in well into the MCU. That'd be dope. I'm not anticipating that at all. I still think it'd be like a Doctor Strange situation with Benedict, popping up. But
as Johnny pointed out last week, the question in the interview, they raised it. Is this going to be a Luke Skywalker level cameo? So it was not Elizabeth Olsen herself saying, "Get ready, there's a Luke Skywalker level cameo." So she's kind of been painted into this corner of like now everybody's got their hopes up, but it's not necessarily on her. But let's go a little bit into this episode 6, the all new Halloween Spooktacular. Love the name. Love the whole like each name being like
early
a classic TV.
Like late 90s-y.
Yeah, this was the 90s themed episode, and I love straight from the start the I don't remember if it was Billy or Tommy like walking down the stairs, but he's like, Halloween is the best time of year, and he's like talking to the camera as the little credits are on the screen. That just like brought back the memes of like late 90s, early 2000s TV, like you were saying.
Yeah, that was actually one of the first things I noticed. Well, I had thought about it last week a little bit because even last week's episode, which would have been in episode 5, like it had been following like the decades, sequentially. And then that one felt like very much like Full House, like kind of like almost like Roseanne type. And it like, those were shows that kind of went from like 80s to 90s and like kind of like spanned that gap. And then that also felt like the same thing in this episode where like it kind of felt like late like 90s, but also like early 2000s. Like Malcolm in the Middle was the first show I thought of.
Yeah.
I saw a lot of comparisons to that. And
that show definitely is like more early to like mid 2000s with the narration, like addressing the camera.
Even the intro was.
Yeah. The music. I mean, even the music, the clothes, all that kind of stuff. So I thought that was cool.
While we're talking about the influences really quick, let's back to like the scope of the season, what we think. So next episode is gonna, if they continue forward, it'll be like the 2000s, and then after that the 2010s. So we already know, like we've seen footage of a Modern Family inspired episode, which I assume would be the 2010s. And so then 2000s, everyone, I guess like back when they were making it, there was like a mention of an Office themed episode. Everybody's built up about it. Everybody's expecting it. So that could be, I want to say The Office was like 2006 maybe?
It came out in 2004.
2004. Okay.
Yeah.
So it would fit in that, and obviously like you said, it stretches. So if they go just the whole like mockumentary, I know that Modern Family is still like mockumentary as well with like the sit down interviews.
Yeah.
But obviously two very different styles of that. And also another piece of evidence for John Krasinski, get him into the Office themed episode, have him do the Jim face of the camera, and the internet explodes.
Yeah.
I just wonder about, unless her expanding the hex at the end just reset everyone's mind, but like there were some pretty significant unfolding things that happened in the episode, and it seems very difficult for me to believe that like the sitcom would still continue unless that's what happened. Like by expanding it, everyone's memory has sort of been wiped, and like Vision is now back where he was in episode 1 or
right. Yeah,
I mean, I'm fully expecting sort of like to continue with like the split episodes. Like, I don't think we're going back to the 1 and 2 or 1, even 3, I guess, where it was all just like completely sitcom,
I think to Jake's point as well, like, I think that this next episode, it's kind of like in between. I think this one's going to be largely like sitcom, like more like The Office or like Modern Family. And then I think probably like the last episode 8 and episode 9 will probably be. I could see those ones being like full blown like MCU. Like,
well, that's what I was saying with so if you go Office, you go Modern Family, then you have the full last episode to be complete. Like you're caught up with the decades and your full MCU.
And also, I guess these last few episodes are going to be like extra long, supposedly, like an hour.
Well, that means 40 minutes, but 20 minutes.
That's what I said. But there's one that was like 42 minutes, and then it was like a 31-minute show with 11 minutes of credits.
I mean, but it's still going to be like 10 to 15 minutes more than what we've been getting.
Yeah, for sure.
Is there going to be a post-credit scene though? They've got it at the end of the last episode. They've got to.
Oh, I hadn't thought about that. Yeah, I would think so. I hadn't thought about that at all.
I'm sure that. Well, it's. I guess it's depending on what they reveal in the last episode, but I can only imagine the post-credit scene would be
Doctor
like
Strange.
Yeah, multiverse thing.
The post-credit scene is just Luke Skywalker showing up.
It's actually the entire Black Widow movie.
Yeah.
Shit. Yeah.
So, a couple before we move on, just. You mentioned it, Jake, with the expansion of the Hex. Some of the biggest things that happened in this episode where we hadn't even mentioned it, but disturbances on Halloween separate Wanda from Vision, who looks into anomalous activity in Westview. That anomalous activity, the people all being concentrated in one area, the ones on the outskirts just like going through the motions, almost like robots, obviously under control. I don't know. It's almost as if like Wanda was having to concentrate her powers on like where they were, that it was getting too big for her almost. But then obviously we see at the end that nothing is too big for her because she literally expanded the Hex in order to save Vision. So that's a big thing. Vision tries to leave. RIP literally gets ripped apart as he's trying to leave.
They're doing a really good job of making it particularly unnerving, though. I mean, like watching those people go through emotions, and the whole scene with Agnes I thought was really well executed. And Paul Bettany's performance when he's trying to leave, and like you hear him say help, and like your first instinct is like he's asking for help, and then he finishes by saying the people need help. And that's a brilliant line of dialogue to really kind of convey what this character's intentions always have been, and I thought all of that was phenomenal. So
yeah, I agree for sure. I think they've done a good job kind of expanding on Vision as a character.
Yeah, definitely.
Especially making him more similar to how he is in the comics. Yeah. And I thought, that was obviously, shocking because, I didn't expect him to start ripping apart for one thing. But also, I kind of almost half expected, like when he was breaching the Hex, I wasn't sure what would happen to him, I guess. Like I wasn't sure if he was gonna
fall down.
Yeah, top head, look gray with a hole in his head or whatever. But yeah, I know. I thought what they ended up doing with it was really interesting. I'm curious to see, like, now that he's been through that, like, how can he possibly go back at all to like the sitcom?
Unless it is like a memory wipe thing, But but I think you brought up a good point, Johnny. He really is, I think, the closest to text adaptation that Marvel has created in terms of a superhero, because like Iron Man is much more of an asshole in the comics.
Yeah.
Like Thor, they've definitely done some creative liberties with Thor. Captain America is pretty easy to replicate, but in terms of making a true absolute adaptation, I think Vision has been their best iteration of that, and this has only enhanced my belief in that too.
Well, a couple other things with that expansion. Darcy is now in the Hex. Thoughts on that? Are we excited to see her memory wiped and playing some sort of character there? How do we feel about Darcy as the sort of her and James Woo being like the sidekicks this season or this show? Anybody?
I've liked them for sure. Randall Park especially. I think everyone loves him. And he's great in the role. But I've never been too like invested in what's going on the outside, to be quite honest. I don't think I'm not, Monica Rambeau. I think she's a fine character.
Speaking of, speaking of,
Yeah,
her DNA is being rewritten, so she's a mutant.
There's mutations going on.
Exactly, and she's been known like in the comics. She like is a superhero. She has powers, so that's obviously incoming at some point.
Yeah,
And
definitely seems like they're setting that up.
it seems to also have been like the setup for mutants entering the MCU. Is everyone within the Hex going to like create mutants now?
Well, I don't know. Maybe, because then you have this population that's been living in there and being affected by Scarlet Witch's powers, and then conceivably they're going to go out into the world and like interact with other people, and maybe they're all just going to like. It's almost like Dr. Manhattan when he gives everyone cancer, gives everyone cancer. But I don't know, because I had heard this theory, and it makes sense in one regard, but in another regard, like, what about Magneto? Like him being a mutant, if you follow his traditional origin, which you absolutely should, I think, if you're going to do that character, he's in World War II. Like he's like, in the Holocaust. Like there's all like, this is decades and decades ago. Now, how you could possibly, retroactively do that, because we have not seen Magneto at all in this universe, and it's been around for over 10 years, doesn't really make sense, which is almost why I lend more credence to the idea of bringing him over from the Fox movies, because then you don't have to explain, well, where the hell has Magneto been like for decades? Why hasn't he revealed himself? Why hasn't he done anything? I think just
actually Norm is Magneto.
Oh yeah,
that's the origin story. He goes from computer services to Magneto.
I think I think with the multiverse being introduced in this whole show is gonna have like huge ramifications for not just the Doctor Strange sequel and Spider-Man 3, but just how the MCU is going to be structured going forward, and introducing other characters, whether it be the Fantastic Four or mutants or the X-Men. So it's an interesting thing to think about. I just don't know exactly how they're going to implement it.
I just hope it's Magneto.
Last thing I want to mention here, I read a theory. I don't know if you guys, I put the link in. I don't know if you read it, but it's finally like piecing together. I'd never really thought too deep into it, but the commercials from each episode, and that it's like a theory that each one represents a Infinity Stone. I don't know if that's going to mean anything or if that's just like an Easter egg, but it's like the toaster from the first one, it looked like Vision's head, so that was like the Mind Stone. And then one of the watch is the Time Stone. The bath soap was like in a blue square, so it looked like the Tesseract. Then like one of the paper towels wiped up like red liquid that looked like the Reality Stone, like the Aether or whatever. I'm trying to remember what. The one this week was the little claymation guy.
Yeah.
That he was trapped somewhere and turned into a skull, and so it was like Red Skull on Vormir with the Soul Stone.
They're reaching, huh? Talk about missing past it.
But I've also so I don't know if that's like more of just like trying to make an Easter egg work or not.
Yeah.
But there's also been like the connections, which I hadn't thought of. I'm just really bad at analyzing this, I guess. But it was just like each one representing like Wanda and her past, her like history.
Yeah.
The Strucker watch obviously having like been experimented on by Strucker, and then
my favorite is the Lagos paper towel.
I didn't put the two and two together there. That Lagos is cleaning up a mess you didn't mean to make, or something like that. And
that's the thing. Like, what was this one's representative of? Like, I've been trying to think about it, but I don't know if anyone else has speculated.
This is saying the theory that I had read says that the Yo Magic commercial seems to deal with Captain America Civil War. In the aftermath of the explosion, Wanda not only has to live with her mistake, survivor's guilt, but she also has to remain at Avengers headquarters indefinitely. Vision is there to keep her company, the Crab perhaps, but she's intimidated to stay, and she's too petrified from her own fear and the fear of others to go against it. So she's like trapped on that island, or he's trapped on the island, she's trapped in headquarters, just withering away.
I mean, I definitely have recognized the other commercials being representative of things from her past and even with Vision, but like this week in particular, I was just like watching it. I'm like, okay, what exactly? Like, where's this going? Like, I was waiting for the name of the yogurt, like all that stuff, and then I was just like, I don't really know what the hell that's supposed to mean. I don't know if anyone else. Again, I haven't read or like listened to anything really talking about that in particular, but I'm sure someone has a much better theory or analysis.
You hating on my theories here?
Wait. I know you've been up late at night, Zach, just pulling these things together.
I've been combing the internet 5 minutes before we get on this podcast, Johnny.
But I mean, I'm curious. I hope they keep them coming. I mean, I like with the sitcom, every time they cut to commercial, I think it's a real commercial, and then I'm like, okay, wait, no, this is this is
part of the show.
Yeah, it's part of the show, especially as they've been becoming more modern. I'm sure next week's will probably be the most deceptive yet, but
this one did seem very much like a Go-Gurt commercial or something that would have come on like Nickelodeon, like while I'm in between SpongeBob episodes.
Yeah, agreed. But yeah, no, I mean, I thought my favorite part of the episode in particular, before we move on, was just Vision trying to escape. And then of course the Hex like expanding, and I don't really care necessarily that Darcy's in there. Like, I mean, Darcy again is fine, but like I don't really like care about her like as a character, you know what I mean? And so if someone else had been trapped in there, like if Wu had been trapped in there, okay, I'd care like a little bit more probably. But like there's no one else on the outside in the show thus far where if they got stuck in, I'd be like, oh no, not that person. But
Right.
I think I liked, the clowns, the whole circus kind of theme as part of the expansion where, you had the sword operatives basically and agents being transformed into like circus performers and clowns. And like, I guess I don't know if that's how Wanda like thinks of them. And that's kind of like why they're turning to that. Like, it's just this big circus and, they're clowns and they're just being, told what to do and like all these other things. But I'm curious to see how that factors into whether it be the next episode or the next few. Because I think that would be interesting. But I guess I also kind of want to ask you too, what did you think with regards to the kids? Because we hadn't like seen them do much of anything. I mean, they're kind of had just aged up, I suppose. But I think everyone had suspected that they'd probably have powers. And then of course you have Quicksilver, Evan Peters kind of taking them under his wing and like being a good / bad influence on them. What do you think? Anything's going to come of that? Like, do you think they're going to exist after the show ends? Like, what do you think?
No, we hadn't even talked. Like, I was meant to mention that actually. I completely forgot, but I know we said before we wrap up of WandaVision, but now this is like a whole new thing to talk about.
That's the thing though with WandaVision. There's so much speculation that I feel like we barely end up talking about the actual content that we get, like the concrete like plot. And,
right, but yeah, we have to talk about the kids, and we got more. Obviously, last week's episode ended with the Evan Peters reveal, so we actually finally got to see him in action a little bit. And it's still, I'm gonna say, it's still uncertain whether that is the MCU or whether that is the X-Men Evan Peters or not. Like he obviously has different memories than Wanda, like when he's recounting their childhood, and it's like it's different than Pietro, like the Aaron Taylor Johnson Pietro. So maybe it's still up in the air, at least for me. But yeah, the kids, one of them had superpowers as Quicksilver, and then we thought the other one was just going to be lame, like Sky High. You remember that movie? He's going to go and be a sidekick, but then he also has powers, which are more in line with Wanda, it looks like, or just like more like, I don't know, telekinesis type stuff in general versus just super speed.
Yeah, and I think like the more that they add stuff, it's becoming more closely related to the House of M speculation that everyone was expecting. And, the assumption, I guess, with that is, and this is obviously me reaching back to my initial thing. Like if it is House of M, then you're hoping at least that Magneto would come at some point. But it seems like they're introducing way too much of that to like not include him in line with it. But of course, they could be debating. But
and I also I hadn't seen it I guess it was back when Age of Ultron was doing it, but it's been circulating on social media. I'm sure you guys have seen it now. But it was like the interview. It might have been when Civil War happened, but it was the interview with Elizabeth Olsen, and they were like, "What would you want to do with Scarlet Witch? Like, what story would you want to tell?" And she was talking all about House of M. So it was like, did she predict WandaVision like 5 years before WandaVision happened?
Yeah, that was Age of Ultron, so like 6 years ago, which is nuts. Because the way she talks about it, like you can tell, like she was like passionate about it. But the fact that they pretty much, I mean, I haven't actually read House of M, but to like very close to a T. The way, of course, they're adding their own little MCU elements to it to make it all tie in. But what she wanted to get out of that, like an adaptation of that sort, I think is what we've been getting, which I think is nice.
Yeah.
All right. That's enough WandaVision. We're only about 45 minutes into this episode, so let's keep it moving. We've got some news. Johnny, kick us off. What do we have on the schedule today?
Ooh, buddy. I am so excited. Zach, this first bit of news, you probably won't care as much. I know. Jake,
I'm still excited just because of the hype around it, you know?
Jake, you have played it?
Yeah, I played The Last of Us.
Okay,
Oh,
good.
my bad.
Spoiler alert. You stole Johnny's thunder.
No, that's okay. We love the passion. But the HBO show that they've had in the works for a little bit now with The Last of Us, from Neil Druckmann, who's famous for his work at Naughty Dog as a writer and director, and then Craig Mazin, he was the writer and basically like the showrunner over when they did Chernobyl. I've teamed up and they're doing The Last of Us adaptation as a series. And finally, we got the two big pieces of casting news that we've all been kind of speculating about and fan casting for months now. And that's Pedro Pascal as Joel and Bella Ramsey as Ellie. So we have two Game of Thrones alumni popping up. They're keeping it in-house, which I think is cool. Wasn't expecting it, but I think the reception so far has been like super positive. And it was kind of just a rush of news that was out of nowhere, it seemed like. So Jake, I guess I'll turn to you first since you've played the games and kind of have a little bit more of expectations. Like, how'd you feel about the news and what are you kind of hoping to see from these, like their own twists on it? Because of course it's not going to be a one-to-one replication, or at least you would hope not, because it's a completely different medium and everything.
Yeah, I loved the first one. I haven't played the second one, but I think Pedro's a pretty perfect casting. I know everyone's talking about like his affinity for being a reluctant father.
I feel like it's like how Keanu had his renaissance. I mean, not that there was really like ever an initial Pedro stage, but like he's the same level as like Keanu was like back when he was in like everything. I mean, he's still like great, but back when it was like John Wick and Cyberpunk before it was bad, and Call Me or Always Be My Maybe, and like when you couldn't go anywhere in like any pop culture without seeing Keanu. I feel like that's Pedro right now.
Yeah, and I think he's a tremendously talented actor. Like first and foremost, I think that he's going to be able to do a lot. I think he's probably super excited at the opportunity because he wasn't able to do a lot of like real acting with The Mandalorian. Of course, like his performance is great in it, but I think that he probably left it the chance to be able to really flex his muscles as an actor. And Bella Ramsey was one of the great supporting characters throughout throughout her Game of Thrones run. So to be able to see both, I think that's spot on casting. It's not who I initially would have thought of, but they are perfect. I think both of them are pretty amazing. So I'm excited to see what they can do. And also I love Chernobyl. I think Chernobyl is one of the finest HBO miniseries iterations that they've ever had. And like to be able to see what they'll be able to do with a really interesting and really kind of fun IP is going to be really cool.
Yeah.
So.
Well, I know, like you said, I haven't played the games, but I do have a little bit to chip in here. First of all, a little surprised with the casting of Bella Ramsey, just because like I know people had fan cast Caitlin Dever quite a bit as Ellie, and I don't just like knowing nothing about the actual content of the game, but obviously a huge age difference, I imagine, between those two. I don't know how old Bella Ramsey is, but
it's like 7 years.
Okay. So just a younger person than I would have expected based on like what I had seen and like just pictures of the games. But I will say these two people are like beloved for being Game of Thrones characters. But when you think about it, in the scale of 8 seasons of Game of Thrones, 70 something, 80 episodes, like these people, Pedro Pascal was in 6, I want to say. And I don't know how many the Lady of Bear Island was in, but it wasn't many. But when both of them were on screen, they were just like absolutely incredible. Like she always stole every scene as just being like the fierce, cute little girl. But then Pedro Pascal, literally absolute tear of 6-episode run that like propelled him into this superstardom.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I agree that I think that's a good point, Zach, is they were, as little as they were on Game of Thrones, which was a huge, long-running show, they had such a big impact and grew to be fan favorites. And talking about the casting, like the age and whatnot, and Bella Ramsey, of course, she was very young when she was introduced on Game of Thrones, but she's older now than Ellie would be in the game. She's like 17. So I think she's a good fit in that regard because she looks younger, but she's a little bit older, so she has that kind of intelligence and can like play to that. So I think that's really smart on their side of things. And then of course Pedro, I mean, again, Jake, great point. He's probably yearning for something like this where he is just like, I mean, he's gonna kill it. Like he's gonna kill it. I would not be surprised to see him pick up awards for this. And I, again, am just so excited as a huge fan of the games to like just have this world like brought to life. And I think there's just so much they can do. And there's a quite a good supporting cast that will still need to come into play as well. So I'm curious to see if they go for maybe, not necessarily bigger than Pedro Pascal, but like bigger names in those roles, or if they're going to go for like smaller, like kind of character actors, whether it be Tess or I believe it was Dave. I'd be curious to see those, but I think they're off to a good start. Definitely promising. I'm excited for, they'll be doing it shooting it this year, and then we'll get it next year, hopefully.
Well, speaking of HBO and Game of Thrones, perfect segue, Jake, as you're back, it's only natural to have a perfect segue here. House of the Dragon, the prequel series focused on the Targaryen dynasty, has rounded out its main cast with Rhys Ifans, Steve Toussaint. Did I say that right? Toussaint.
Yeah.
Eve Best and Sonoya Mizuno. So I don't know, Johnny, you've got the names in here. I don't know if that's something that you know, or is that just a copy and paste? Like, are we familiar with the Targaryen dynasty to have any sort of understanding of what this means?
Well, I'm not familiar with these characters in particular, but I do have them on there because while a lot of the main, because with this, we don't really know, we have a vague idea of what the setting is, like where the time is in relation to the main series. And of course we know about like Aegon's conquest, Duel of the Dragons, like all these other things. But like, we have not seen these characters like in flashbacks, like we haven't seen them at all, like in the original show, or even heard them referenced. So I think they are going to be, of course, more minor players, but I think that's good to know because sometimes they do cast people as like bigger characters, but they're not maybe going to be in the show as much, and then they'll get like more time in like later seasons or something. Because again, we don't really know. We know this first season is going to be like 10 episodes. Okay, is the next season going to be set 100 years later? Is it going to be, are they going to be spanning the whole like dynasty? Again, we can only really focus on like this first season, but I mean, I think the one person that we talked about more than the others, of course, is Mizuno, because Devs, which Jake is a huge fan of, and I still need to get caught up on. But I thought, she's of course a standout in Ex Machina and like the little role that she has, which is almost like entirely nonverbal as well. And then of course, a lot of people don't know, but I'm a huge fan of Annihilation. And she does play like the humanoid, like alien creature at the end of that, who she has like kind of that weird dance with Nella.
Incredible.
She's an awesome performer. I of course need to see her in Devs, but it's cool to see her get a role in another big show that's coming up.
Yeah, I was like astounded with her performance in Devs. I was just watching. The fact that she was able, she carried the entire show. And like, of course, Alex Garland is everything that he does kind of touches to gold. So but her ability to be so complex and so nuanced, and just she's such a strong performer, like you said, and I'm really excited to see her get more work like this, because Debs is just a brilliant beginning for her, like jump into like actual long like main character acting, and I'm excited to see much more of her because she's pretty phenomenal. So
Well, I'm just excited to hopefully have some monoculture back. You know, I know WandaVision has us all watching it on Friday, but it's not like we're all tuning in at 9 p.m. to watch it. So that was always the thing with Thrones. Is Johnny, did you ever come, Jake, when we watched the last season at Silver Spot?
I think I came to 2.
But
the
just
first
that sense of camaraderie, everybody watching it, and that being the conversation. Hopefully, this can still capture some of that original Thrones did. Hopefully it didn't lose any of the goodwill with that series finale. Yeah. But filming, go ahead. Remy.
Well, yeah, filming, as you're about to say, Zach, I know begins in April supposedly, and hopefully things stay on track for that. Then we can get it next year. But it was funny because I was, of course, talking about Mizuno in Ex Machina. And speaking of sci-fi movies that kind of deal with existentialism and AI potentially, coming to life, Apple Studios has landed a package, Zach and Jake, called Dolly, based on Elizabeth Bear's short story of the same name. Florence Pugh is going to star in it. There's no director attached right now.
I'm in. Yeah, Florence Pugh, I'm in.
Little Woman stan, Zach Goins.
Midsummer stan, Fighting with My Family stan, all of them. Florence Pugh's cooking Instagram video stan.
And the script will be written by Oscar winner Vanessa Taylor, who co-wrote The Shape of Water with Guillermo del Toro, and then Drew Pearce will be co-writing that with her. And this is the log line, guys. Get a load of this. The film is a sci-fi courtroom drama in which a robotic companion doll kills its owner and then shocks the world by claiming that she is not guilty and asks for a lawyer. Yeah, as a huge fan of sci-fi and Blade Runner and Ex Machina, like I'm all about like these kinds of stories. And I haven't read up on like the short story and like how well received it's been or anything like that. Maybe I'll check it out before the movie happens. But yeah, it sounds like a good one.
Yeah, it sounds awesome. And like I love Florence Pugh. I think the first thing I did see her in was Midsommar, and then just I still remember her screams are like visceral. They're etched in my memory. But yeah, I think the premise sounds really intriguing. So we'll definitely get updates, but I'm definitely in as well.
Yeah, and obviously echoing everything that you guys have to say about the movie itself, but also, as always, I feel like anytime we see Apple pop up, we just get excited that it's like expanding the portfolio over there. They're still like establishing themselves as a streaming service and like as a studio to beef up what they've got to offer. So obviously this is still a ways away. It's not like people are subscribing today to go and watch this, but still.
Well, I was going to mention that or ask you guys, because we know, of course, the Russo brothers are having Cherry come out, for good or for ill, but that's happening. And then, of course, Ridley Scott is doing, the Kit Bag, the Napoleon film with Joaquin Phoenix over at Apple. And they've had a couple other like major projects.
The Flower Moon, Killing of the Flower Moon.
Scorsese and Leo and De Niro, so those are two like $200 million a piece movies right there. Obviously, this is going to be, sounds like a smaller film, but with those like bigger name directors already kind of getting involved with Apple, if you had to pick someone or like had a couple of names in mind for this, like who would you want to see direct it?
Alex Garland. Yeah.
He definitely comes to mind right away, right?
Yeah, I don't know if he would though. Because I think he likes to write all his own work.
Yeah, I was thinking that too.
He's really one of those guys that like would probably stick to it. But I think
Olivia Wilde,
Drew Goddard, I think might be interesting.
Goddard, yeah.
Olivia Wilde would be really good. Yeah, if they wanted to go for a female director, which would obviously make the most sense, Olivia Wilde would be great.
Yeah, I'd like to see her get into like a genre film like
That would
this.
and that would tie in great because isn't Florence Pugh in Don't Worry,
Yeah.
Darling?
Don't worry, darling.
The star, yeah, and that'll be out later this year, presumably.
Yeah, that would be awesome. Yeah.
So, all right, good idea.
Make it happen. Make it happen. All right, last piece of news, another streaming film. We mentioned this a couple weeks back when news broke that it was happening. And we positioned it against Songbird, another pandemic film. But this is Judd Apatow, his cast for the Netflix comedy called The Bubble, which is a film following a group of actors stuck inside a pandemic bubble at a hotel attempting to complete a film, which, first of all, Judd Apatow is like comedy legend. So that makes it all the more better than a Songbird ultra serious. Like,
Yeah.
this is like just the idea of like, we're still in this pandemic and we're making a movie about a pandemic. This one is much more appealing to me because of the comical aspect of it and kind of almost making fun of Hollywood itself. Like, oh, the world is ending, but we're still going to have to push through and get this movie done. Like, that sounds hilarious to me. But when you throw in this cast, it makes it even better. We've got Karen Gillan, Maria Bakalova of, Golden Globe nominee Maria Bakalova, should I say, Fred Armisen, David Duchovny, Keegan-Michael Key, Leslie Mann, and Pedro Pascal. Again, the Pedro-sans.
Hey, my man's getting that bag one way or another. It's hard to say because, of course, this is a big cast, and I think it had been when the log line came out and they were talking about like actually getting made. I think the comparison was made to like Knives Out. So I would imagine everyone involved to like a solid extent, but of course a couple probably more than others. I would like to see Bakalova like really get like again a stronger like kind of almost lead role like she did in Borat. And then I'm
interested to just see like what she's like when it's not like, because that's such a strong character of like, we don't know. I don't even know like what she looks like normally, other like I haven't ever Googled her or anything, but like to see her not being Borat's daughter, not being Tutor.
Yeah.
Jake, thoughts?
I mean, we'll see. I think it's gonna be cool. I like the cast. Judd Apatow is a comedy legend, like you said, but I just think I would never do like a pandemic movie.
That's fair.
Yeah.
I mean, it's still not like my ideal film, but just comparing it to some of the other ones that like the Songbird or like a Lockdown, it's like, this is more.
Yeah. If anyone would be able to make something out of it, then it would definitely be this group. So
hopefully it's not terrible.
Well, what's not terrible, what's actually excellent is Judas and the Black Messiah. We're reviewing it now.
I want to share something with you. Like the masses, I was in awe when I first laid eyes on all the things you are. I heard that speech. I knew we'd make noise. I just thought it'd be in the streets.
The Black Panthers are the single greatest threat to our national security. Our counterintelligence program must prevent the rise of a Black Messiah.
You're looking at 18 months for the stolen car, 5 years for impersonating a federal officer, or you can go home.
What do you want?
Get close to Hampton.
The Black Panthers are forming a rainbow coalition of oppressed brothers and sisters of every color.
Neutralize him by any means necessary.
This is the latest on HBO Max of the Warner Brothers HBO Max release. Did we all watch it on HBO Max? Or I guess Johnny watched it at Sundance.
Johnny and I watched it on the Sundance.
Yeah, I went to Utah.
So I was the only HBO Max. No theater goers for this one. But this is the latest of that slate of dual, I guess, what am I trying to say here? The dual rollout hybrid releases, yeah. starring.
I'd like to see it in theaters though.
Go ahead.
I'm trying to get in there, I think.
I would definitely see it again. I don't know if I'd go to a theater, but I'd watch it again.
Yeah.
You know, it's a little disheartening when I see party buses pulling up to my apartment. It makes me not want to go out to the movie theater. That's another story. Judas and the Black Messiah, starring Daniel Kaluuya, Lakeith Stanfield, Jesse Plemons, Dominique Fishback, Ashton Sanders, Algie Smith, Dominique Thorne, Lil Rel Howery. Great cameo. I knew he was in it. I just kept waiting for it, and then he came out great. And Martin Sheen. Guys, just initial reactions before we get into all the rest of the details.
Jake,
or do we want to get the details out of the way so we can just flow?
I think that'd probably be the best. Best.
Okay. So let me lay it down. Rotten Tomatoes, 96% critics score, 93% audience score. Johnny and I both at a 95 out of 100. I believe you've made the same statement that this is your number one of the year and you don't really see it changing much unless something fantastic, at least not for the next, not till the end of the year probably.
Yeah. I mean, I got a pretty good handle on the entire year's release calendar at this point. I don't see anything until the Suicide Squad, which is obviously a completely different type of film, but something I could see myself really enjoying.
Right.
Which is August, and that's 6 months away. So it's going to be up there for a while.
Gotcha. I mean, I'm in the same boat. I'm with you there. Number one for me of the 4 or 5 movies I've seen from 2021, but still, I think it'll stay put. Quick plot synopsis here. Based on a true story, FBI informant William O'Neill, played by Lakeith Stanfield. Jake, while we have you here, should we put the narrator voice on? I don't mean to put you on the spot there.
Yeah, I could do it. Hold on.
Just for old time's sake.
Just for old time's sake. My girlfriend is groaning in the background.
She's like, not the narrator voice.
FBI informant William O'Neill infiltrates the Illinois Black Panther Party and is tasked with keeping tabs on their charismatic leader, Chairman Fred Hampton. A career thief, O'Neill revels in the danger of manipulating both his comrades and his handler, Special Agent Roy Mitchell. Hampton's political prowess grows just as he's falling in love with fellow revolutionary Deborah Johnson. Meanwhile, a battle wages for O'Neill's soul. Will he align with the forces of good or subdue Hampton and the Panthers by any means, as FBI Director J. Edgar Hoover commands? Dun, dun, dun. Oh, thanks.
It wasn't that bad, was it, Nicole? We made it work.
Yeah, she said it was okay, so that means it was really good.
All right. Let it rip. Jake, thoughts? You're the guest. The floor is yours.
I echo both of your sentiments. I think it is my best picture of the year. I think it should win Best Picture at this Oscar season. I think it has a decent shot to do so. We'll definitely see within the next month and a half of if it has a good chance. But I mean, it's a phenomenal film. I think it's a really, first, I think the technical elements are something that we definitely have to talk about, because I think the formal elements of this film are what also makes it so special, because it's not just Kaluuya and Stanfield and Fishback, who was, I mean, she should get a lot more praise for what she's been, because that was a phenomenal performance.
Going from Project Power, which is the only thing I had seen her into, this, I was like, is this the same person? My God.
It was astounding. And of course, this always has been like an actor film. Like, we kind of knew that going in, that's what most biopics are anyway. But to be able to understand like the lighting, the camera work, the blocking of the speech, which was like that whole cut speech, I thought was like that was a masterclass in editing. The score, and Nicole and I watched it together, and she told me that that note that you kept hearing the entire time. What was it? What kind of note was it?
It's called an accidental.
It's an accidental note, which means that it never resolves. Which, just much similar to the plot, it never resolves either. Which, like, all of those elements in there that elevated it, and of course, Kaluuya, I think, should win is he being campaigned for supporting actor?
Yeah,
Yeah,
is.
I think clear winner in my opinion for what the Titanic performance. Just something that we kind of knew was coming, and I think that he's solidified himself as probably the best actor of this generation. Or at least has very high chance of becoming that in the next 5 years or so. But yeah, I mean, it was a tremendous film. I thought it was a necessary film, and I think it's probably going to have the Parasite effect on me, where it's going to age like fine wine, and every time I rewatch it, I'm going to find something new and better to appreciate about it. So,
Very well said.
I totally agree. I was just pulling while you said it. I hadn't like thought about it as Daniel Kaluuya being like the best of the generation yet, but like Get Out, Black Panther, Sicario, Widows. I haven't seen Queen and Slim, but I know he's a lead in that. This movie now, like, just beyond just like his performances, like this guy picks like heaters. You know, he does not miss, it seems.
And like to be able to, I think, and Johnny, I'll definitely like let you talk more about, because you were the one that brought it up to me. But like the fact that he can change his voice so much is a talent that does not come from Earth. I mean, like the fact that he's able to do something like he did in Widows, and then Get Out, and then you hear him actually speak, and then you hear this. I mean, it's staggering, and he's incredibly talented. I mean, one of the best that is doing it right now.
Yeah, just to add on to that, I mean, yeah, I think I tweeted about that probably the day after I saw it, because I was just still like reeling from the experience and thinking about, you know, how far he's come just in the last 4 years. Because it's strange to think Get Out was, I think that was March 2017, and like, yeah, I mean, it was that was a star-making performance, but this is kind of like a defining performance, I think, in the fact that the Get Out was unexpected. Like you didn't see it coming necessarily, even if you had been familiar with him, whether it was Sicario or Skins. We knew what he was capable of coming into this movie, and we're still blown away and impressed and surprised. And I just am like so excited and to see where he goes, and like, you know, what filmmakers he gets to work with, and like what genres maybe he explores. Because yeah, he's legit. He's legit. He could win multiple Oscars, I think, with ease. And it's almost like a miracle he hasn't already, given, you know, his performances in Get Out and Widows in particular. But yeah, he's like a thespian. Like he is like, it's very, very, I don't even know like the right word to describe it, but like it's he so easily inhabits these different roles, and they're all just so different, you know, not just the films themselves. And Zach was talking about, you know, he's great in them, but the movies themselves can stand, you know, strongly, whether it be Sicario or Black Panther. I mean, think about something more different than Sicario and Black Panther. I mean, they're just totally different types of films. And I think that, you know, I still remember, and this was probably during 2017, or like kind of when the Oscars were rolling around for Get Out. But when I remember finding out that he was British and how his real voice sounds, and I was just like, what the hell? Because I mean, he just is so good at you know, with the dialect work and his voice work. It's just like it's the physical, it's the mannerisms, and whether he's you know, portraying a real life person or you know, portraying something that's completely fictional, like Get Out, completely fictional, but like it's fun to behold. And the crazy thing, and I think why this movie is so strong, and like I hold it so highly like right now, and I do need to see it again, is just like he's so good, but he's not like, he is, I think you could say maybe he's like the best thing in this movie, at least for me. But like everything else around him is up to that level of like,
it's like all on the same, right? It's not like he's like outdoing everything.
Exactly. Even his other performers, whether it's Fishback or Stanfield or you know, Plemons and Algie Smith, who are in smaller roles. Yeah, and then again, Jake was right to point out like the formal elements from, I mean, just the opening scene where, you know, you're following behind
O'Neill as he's going down the street, and it just feels straight out of like a 70s crime thriller, whether it be like, you mentioned Coppola, and I was talking about that. I was thinking about that Moanhead. I mentioned Scorsese as well. But Shaka King, man, he knocked it out of the damn park. And I have no prior experience with him, whether it be his short films or his other feature film, which was years ago now. But yeah, the guy's legit, and I'm excited, just as I am with Kaluuya, to see where he goes and like what kind of projects he pursues.
I think
everyone here is doing well, and it's the director is above all is the person who has to make sure everyone is riding that line and on the same kind of level. And so I respect the hell out of what he did.
I think that like you guys keep mentioning like the formal elements and like all of that. It's just that with a biopic specifically, and one that has like a story as powerful as this, I feel like it's very easy often to like just let the story tell itself, like, do it by the numbers, make it so basic, just like let the story speak for itself and not really have a good performer, but not really emphasize like like you're mentioning, like the lighting, the direction, the cinematography or the score or anything like that. But that's most certainly like not what they did here. That's the complete opposite. And I think that's just so refreshing to see. Cause I mean, when you think about like a recent, I guess it was loosely considered like a biopic of like Bohemian Rhapsody, like being something that is recently gotten awards love, as in the same genre, I guess you would say. But there couldn't be more of a difference between that and this, and that it's just like absolutely insane if this is not rewarded on the same and higher level as that was.
Yeah, and I really think Shaka King should get a Best Director nomination. I know that there's a minuscule chance that he will, but it's a tremendous outing for him, and this is the official get Shaka King to direct Blade train, because that would
get your shirts on InsideFilmRoom.com.
that would be tremendous, because I know that. But yeah, it's a tremendous outing for him. I think that everyone involved. My friend Glenn Wilson was the set photographer for the film, and I was talking to him back in March about it because I'd been following it for quite some time, and he said he remembers that experience, and he's worked on I think like at least 30 different sets, spanning, or 30 to 50, I think, like spanning 10 years, and he said that was like the singular, like the defining film experience he's had working on a set. And watching this film, it gives you absolutely every indication that he was correct. And I think just the amount of grace that King had with his direction, I think that and we'll probably jump around, but especially talking about like the death of Fred Hampton, and how that was portrayed. Every other film that we would have seen up to this point, even some by Black directors, probably would have shown Hampton being murdered, like shown his physical body, like the bullets penetrating, but to make the smart refined choice, and the careful choice to show it from Deborah Johnson, Fishback's point of view, and like that hits much harder than just watching more Black trauma on screen, and to be able to like take such a staggering moment in the film that is heartbreaking, even that much more heartbreaking, by show it from the point of view of the love of his life, it's a testament to what he can do as a director, and I'm excited to see what he can do next.
And I think it's like, Johnny, you mentioned this in your written review on the site, and also on culture.org, but so feel free to jump in, but he has that grace that you're mentioning, and like the knowing when to pull back, but also at the same time, he doesn't like pull any punches at all, versus like, obviously this story is just like absolutely devastating, and he tells it like it is. Like there is no like, speaking of the trial of the Chicago 7, of something that is like, obviously you guys have your feelings on that movie, but like the base story itself, like is like a similar time and era, and just like the injustice of like, Aaron Sorkin is more of like the, but we can all make it better type thing versus like this, which is like telling it like it is. This is like real shit, and he's not trying to soften anything.
Right. No, that's a good point. Because I did. Well, it was something that Jake and we talked about on the phone after we watched it, and you hadn't seen it yet. And I was asking Jake, I said, what did you kind of expect in that regard? And like, how did you feel about, how Hampton's murder was, presented and everything? And you basically said exactly what you just said, which I totally agree with. But I think we kind of were also feeling similarly about the fact that we wanted it to, we didn't want it to be like dulled necessarily, or like the effects of it and like the brutality of it and the violence of it. I think you still feel that without making it like gratuitous or tasteless, which I think is something also, talking in the group chat more recently, having all of us seen it now. We were talking about the ending with O'Neill and like his, death. And part of it was kind of thinking, I know Josh was talking about this as well, but like, could we have gotten more with O'Neill? Could we have seen more of his life kind of following Fred Hampton's murder and then getting, being older and then eventually, committing suicide? But I thought, and again, as someone who, I think we talked about this on the podcast where I was just talking about how much I hate like postscript in biopics and talking about, this happens, in later in life.
Back to bite you.
And yeah, I feel like I'm so glad that it has, because I feel like this is a rare example where I felt like it was done in a way that was tasteful and like artistically responsible and felt like right. And it still felt like it had an effect that felt kind of artistic in a way, because it was like the information and the timing of it and the way that it was just delivered to the viewer felt like, and again, Josh, said he had kind of a different feeling about it. But for me, it was like, that was like one of the biggest gut punches in the entire film, because it's like, wow, like this guy was really, I mean, you can sense it during the movie, of course, and like Keith Stanfield's performance is fantastic, but like the suffering that he endured for 20 years after that, and mentally, and, the turmoil he was dealing with in his head, which eventually led to him, taking his own life because of the position that he was coerced into, essentially, with the FBI. Yeah, it was just a lot of really smart decisions by Shaka King, and I think that's just one prime example. But I think Jake, in particular, you were talking about Sean Bobbitt's cinematography. Were there any particular like sequences that stood out to you? And Zach, kind of like asking you the same question.
Yeah, I mean, I think that we talked about it early on, but and it was early on in the film when O'Neill goes back to his apartment, and then he's sitting in the red light juxtaposed to the blue light on the same apartment, and it's like split down the middle, was beautiful. I thought that whole sequence when they were talking about the bomb that O'Neill had in his car when he was trying to wire them looked breathtaking. But yeah, I mean, I think that it reminded me a lot of like Coppola's direction, but I mean, obviously it looked a lot like Steve McQueen's stuff just because it is Sean Bobbitt. But yeah, I mean, it looked beautiful. And I was also told that the score is actually it's a dissonant note, not an accidental.
Okay.
Yeah, so had
important correction for all the music theory majors out there listening.
We don't want any people hating on us for doing that. But yeah, I think that it looked astounding, and that was one of the strongest elements of it, because like as soon as just like you said, like the opening sequence, as soon as you see it, you're just like you can tell that you're going to be in at least for something that looks beautiful, and then once the film unfolds, you realize how good it actually is.
To your point, real quick before Zach chimes in, the Coppola, like in particular, just like a lot of it, it's a beautiful film. Like there's absolutely no denying it at all. But like a lot of the compositions reminded me especially of like the Godfather movies.
Yeah, no, exactly.
And it's kind of hard to describe, but like just the way, I know one example I think would be when they're in that bar when they go back, and O'Neill, of course, is nervous because he was there earlier, and they knew of him. And Fred Hampton goes in. It's just like the way the camera kind of glides around, and there's all these different points in the barb where you kind of have to keep your eye out. And you never, like, the geography is like really solid. Like, you never lose track of anyone or anything. And when it does, it like has a certain effect. So yeah, a lot of it is a little bit more subtle than maybe I was expecting, just because of Bobbitt's work that I have seen. Shame in particular is like so beautiful. I definitely understand like that point. And Zach, I'm sure, is probably kind of privy to that same thing.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, still not with the Godfather background, so I can't make the comparisons there. But I mean, that didn't stop any sort of appreciation or anything on my end of just like I said earlier, like, it's not just the basic biopic, but they've clearly put so much effort into all the other aspects of the film as well, which make it all the better. One thing I wanted to touch on, I mean, for me personally, like, I don't want to speak for you guys, but like, the only things that I really knew about this story were from watching Chicago 7, you know, when they like talk about Fred Hampton and stuff. So like, obviously that's like not only like on me for not knowing that, but like that just like speaks to like how we're taught US history in school, how we're taught like what's important and like who tells the stories of like history, you know, not to get all Hamilton out there, but
right.
Like what were how much did you know going in? How much had you researched or were you just like already familiar with? Because again, like, I knew where the story was going based on what happens in Chicago 7. I watched it with my brother, who this was like, he admitted like beforehand, this is like a huge blind spot in his US history and just like understanding of how the country works. But that, I just want to hear what you guys have to say about that.
Yeah, I knew all of it. In college, I really kind of gained a real prominent interest in the Black Panther Party. Like, you know, Eldridge Cleaver, Huey Newton, you know, Bobby Seale, just like about how they founded it in Oakland and then the different chapters. And Fred Hampton was always one of the ones that always stuck out. And I listened to about like probably 2 to 3 hours worth of him speaking on various YouTube channels. And he became an instant favorite of mine. Just the way he was so eloquent, he was so powerful, but he was so like, it was such a natural speaker, like none of it felt forced, and it was so passionate.
And which is what he says when she's talking about like writing the speeches, and he's like, oh, I don't write my speeches, I just get up there and flow.
No, and but yeah, I mean, I knew all the events. So it was just good to know that it was that's why I'd been following it for so long. I remember when this was called the Untitled Fred Hampton Biopic. I think way back in like 2017, 2018 is when they first announced it. So I'd been following this for a long time. I was just really excited that more people were going to get to see who Fred Hampton was, because he was this close to being one of the most like prominently influential figures in American history. And if he was given the chance at more life, who knows what he could have accomplished.
Right.
So.
And that's what Johnny, like what you said a lot in I'm sure you're about to dive into it, but in your review of like, at long last, like finally this story is being presented in a way that so many more people will have access to it.
Yeah. And I think that's what's really great, because of course this was basically independently produced, but then you have Warner's, which is a bigger studio, and they, you know, whether you think the HBO Max thing was good or bad business or for artists, what have you. I mean, the availability of it right now, especially with the pandemic going on, the streaming is really a positive sign, I think. Going into it, I had known of Fred Hampton. I knew pretty much all the like major details. The one thing though I will say was I was not familiar with Bill O'Neill as a person, and of course as a character within this story. I knew that Fred Hampton had been drugged and then murdered, during an FBI raid, and he was 21, and it was in Chicago. He was the chairman, and I was like, when I had found that out, and this was in the last like couple of years probably, I was like, first off, kind of like you, Zach, like, wow, like I really
I've been alive for like how many years, and I had never once heard of this. And so I knew of that, but I thought this was, once I heard of this concept for this film that they were making, I was like, okay, that's an interesting story to tell. I think from not necessarily O'Neill's perspective. I think a lot of the movie is from his perspective, but just his time spent like with the party, his interactions with Hampton, and of course eventually, as an informant, how he was important to the success of his assassination. And then of course, again, a huge thing that made that the postscript so impactful and like kind of flooring to me was I didn't know that he killed himself. I didn't know he went on to live for a couple more decades, and he was doing pretty well for himself, thanks to what the FBI had provided for him. So yeah, hearing that, going into this completely blindly, I'm sure it'd be gutting for a lot of people that Fred Hampton gets assassinated at the end of the movie, and then of course O'Neill ends up killing himself. For me, I knew the vast majority of the events leading up to it, but then what happens after the fact and the way they kind of provided that extra context and information, I thought, while I usually am not a fan of it when they do that in biopics, I thought that was one of the rare instances where I thought it was done well and had a good effect. And it's funny because, I think Malcolm X and like Martin Luther King Jr., those are the two figures you hear about the most, and that are kind of like thrown around, even to an extent, thinking back, because I'm 24 years old now, so far removed from like high school and middle school, but like Martin Luther King is like really the one person that they talk about like by far the most with regards to like the civil rights movement and leaders of the movement, and then Malcolm X, when he is referenced or talked about, is largely negative. And I think you can see that. I mean, they kind of whitewash that when they talk about, even, Martin Luther King, because he was hated at the time, and they don't really tell you that now, but he was not seen as like a positive, figure or influence in the country. Of course, he was assassinated, so you kind of get that essence. But Fred Hampton, he was so young, and he was, in Chicago, one of the major cities, and was on the rise. And it's like you get this story cut so short. Like it's hard to compare. Malcolm and Martin were very young as well when they were assassinated, but I mean, still quite older than Hampton was. So I'm just glad that this story not only ended up, getting this huge platform, but also the fact that it was done so damn well. And I'm just like so like relieved. And I was so excited when like we got to the end of it, and I was like, okay, they didn't like fuck it up. Like they actually had the right people in there, and it all kind of came together.
And I think those two things really bring me to the two main points that I had, I think, through our prior discussions. One was addressing an issue that I'm seeing, or people have had like a repeating issue about this, or like at least a discussion about it. And the latter being sort of deconstruction of the title itself. But I think the first issue is that it's something that my friend out here said. It's something that Josh had talked about, where people do wish that there was more of O'Neill's internal struggle, which would have made it that more effective with the postscript. But I of course like don't agree with that claim. I think that, and it's been revealed that King didn't either. I mean, he initially had a cut of the film which had a lot more of O'Neill in it, and then he showed it to Ava DuVernay and Barry Jenkins and and other Black film directors who thought that the story should be Fred Hampton's. And I that's the first thing that I said when I initially had this discussion, that apropos of what the title is and apropos of making it a more cinematic experience, this isn't a cinematic experience. It's a story it's an untold story that deserves the right to be heard. And I don't think that we should necessarily need to be concerned with the machinations on how O'Neill was grappling with the situation, because obviously he's grappling with the situation. I mean, at every turn he's coerced, he's forced, and we can tell in various scenes that he's struggling with what's been going on and what's happening.
Mhm.
But the film is not necessarily about an interpersonal struggle. It's about a systemic problem, and it's about that O'Neill was forced into a trap, the same trap that murdered Fred Hampton, and the same trap that ultimately, you could say murdered him. And it's not about, because the FBI wins at the end. Everyone on that end goes home happy, and they continue about their business, and they've been that way since the founding of the FBI. And like that's what the film is trying to say. It's because obviously it would have been a more cinematic experience to watch the devolution of this character, but it's not about that. It's about how this society has been upheld for so long, and how the inability for people to speak on it. And I think that was a brilliant element in there that I think shouldn't go unnoticed.
And I'm gonna ask you specifically, Jake, because Zach, have you seen The Departed?
I have not. I feel like that was one that I like started to watch with my family when I was younger, and then my parents were like, "No, this is too adult."
That's fair play to them. Jake, you've seen The Departed, and you haven't?
No.
Okay, I remember talking to Josh about it in the group chat, but so I guess it'll be hard for me to kind of talk about it in those terms. But it's been compared to The Departed a lot. Like even the Lucas brothers were pitching it as that. And I think this is better than The Departed for sure. But as someone who, The Departed won Best Picture, and Scorsese finally won Best Director for that. It's just it'll be interesting to see what ends up happening with this movie in the short term, with regards to awards potential and those kind of actual recognition, officially. But I think while The Departed is always, it's that element of crime thriller, and that you see that in this movie as well. I think they did do a good job, kind of like what you were talking about, Jake, because in The Departed, you're getting the rat of the movie. You're seeing him kind of grapple with it. But here it's you get the same thing, but it's not I think we were talking about not dramatizing it, over dramatizing it. You know what I mean? We don't need that much exploration of this kind of figure in the grand scheme of what ends up happening. You know what I mean? And I do think, we're talking more about the religious parallels as well, which I thought after I explored it more, we were kind of talking about that. I'm like, holy shit, this is really you could not make it up. You could not make this story up. And so I think that makes it just that more kind of flooring and powerful at the end of it, because again, the story is one thing, the film is another thing. And the way that it can portray the real life people and tell the story in a respectful way, but a powerful way, in a way that holds up as art, I think it's the highest praise that you can give to that kind of story, especially a biopic, which so often are dull or don't have that kind of passion in them. I think that's kind of the best thing I can say about it.
Yeah, it was really just the perfect storm of like you said, the story, but then all the other elements coming together to make it more than just the story.
Right. Yeah. And I mean, just Jake's pointing out the fact that, Ava DuVernay and Barry Jenkins, the fact that those filmmakers had the slightest influence on this, I think is pretty amazing. Because, Shaka King at the end of the day has to make the decisions, but it's almost like it was takes a village, which it does with films, especially because it's a collaborative effort, but having those outside voices as well.
And I think also the film, even the title, I think is a brilliant iteration of what this film actually is, because it's about the deconstruction of mythical figures, deconstruction of how we view influential people throughout. And I think that when you watch Selma, you see Martin Luther King as exactly who you'd expect him to be. I think Malcolm X, Spike Lee's Malcolm X, you get a little bit more into who Malcolm X is as a man, but ultimately you're still astounded by the gravitas of this person and his ability to move mountains. But when you think of a Messiah, you think of those idols, and I think using J. Edgar Hoover's terminology, and sort of like understanding that like this isn't about like the exploration of what makes people more than human. This is the exploration of humanity, and like being able to, for us to see Fred as a human being, you know, to see him laugh, to see him cry, to see him struggle, to see him vacillate with the various difficulties that are going on in his life, especially when he comes back from prison. And then on the flip side, being able, you know, and we always think of Judas, like a Judas figure as like, you know, the uber villain, you know, the one that betrays all, and the one that like stays the course. And like and of course that's not who Judas was in biblical terms, and that's neither who O'Neill was either. And we're able to understand truly sort of like, and I think it is a beautiful deconstruction of who we view and who we name these people as. And I think like being able to understand that makes it all the more powerful, because, you know, we're not watching a Judas, or we're not watching a Messiah. We're watching like two men that were pitted against each other by a system that has continued to dominate the lives of Black Americans to this day.
Yeah, well, just real quick, it just kind of like struck me when you were talking about that, because of course Fred does go to prison in the movie for a period of time, so he's kind of like removed. But just thinking like not one of these people that we've been talking about, like Malcolm Martin, you know, Huey P. Newton, Bobby Seale, like not one of them escaped like going to like jail. Like the system, like at all times had some sort of like effect on them, even when they were living. Which is just like, it's interesting because you're thinking about, like, you're mentioning Malcolm X, and you do get more insight to him as like a person, and like his like inner thoughts, and like not being totally, you know, made into like an iconic figure necessarily. But I think you're right in saying that this one does a really, really good job. And I've seen people say the opposite, which I certainly disagree with regards to like making them to like mythic figures. I think they did a good job of bringing them back down, and not overstating like things of that kind of nature.
Because I think the only real iteration, or the only real scene that we get of that, is the speech, which is like one of the most powerful scenes in the film. But like that seems almost out of character for Fred, like throughout the film, because he is a pretty grounded individual, and obviously he's passionate, but like we see him as so approachable that like when we see him up on a podium, it seems almost out of place for him to be above the people that he speaks with.
Especially with like Deborah, like when she goes, "I didn't expect you to be shy of all people." Like that exactly speaks to like what you're saying of we do see him as this like down to earth guy. We see him in these one-on-one moments in small groups, not necessarily, with the exception of that major speech, like showing off the massive charisma and just like ability to lead people.
Which is also, I think, one of the reasons why I loved One Night in Miami so much, is because like we were able to see all those. It's the same thing. They did the exact same thing, and I thought that both of those. I think that these films would really be good, like as a pairing, to be able to sort of like watch Black directors care for, you know, people that have been idolized for quite some time, not only in Black culture but in American culture. But yeah, I mean, this definitely was. It's still, I think, the best picture of the year, and it was a tremendous joy to not only have it meet my high expectations, but have them exceed them in numerous ways, some of which I didn't even consider. And I think it's a testament to really everyone involved, because you could tell that this was a collaborative filmmaking experience. I mean, like sometimes you can get that it's like the director's vision. I think that's like a lot of what David Fincher does, but like to be able to see everybody on, like you could tell even like probably the gaffers like were treated like the right way. And, you know, I think everybody coming together and believing in what the story and the power that it held, you could tell it was radiating off of the screen.
Now we just have to wait and hope that the Academy does the right thing.
Yeah.
The right thing.
Any final thoughts before we wrap it up here? This is Excellent discussion. I feel like this is usually what happens. I feel like I go to sleep at like 9:30, 10 o'clock since I'm working this early morning shift, and then I wake up to like 62 DMs between you guys just going back and forth.
I'm fine with leaving it at Jake's last few comments there. I think it was a good summation and good conclusion. I totally agree.
Well, in that case, Jake, first of all, thank you so much for coming back. We always enjoy having you back here. Give the people a quick shout. Let them know where they can find Good Samaritans, what the deal is there.
We'll be releasing it on all platforms. I sound like a music artist, but it will.
Check the SoundCloud.
Check the SoundCloud for it. It'll be on YouTube, but we'll be distributing it. Instagram, Twitter, you'll be able to see it. So keep an eye out. February 20th, this Friday. We're really excited to share what you've been working on, or what we've been working on. So,
and we'll definitely be amplifying that as well on our social channels. Always got to support the co-founder over there. But again, thank you all for listening. Thank you, Jake. We can't do it without you guys, without your support. We really appreciate it week in and week out. And again, Jake, we appreciate you coming back.
Yeah, Jake, obviously super proud of you and what you and Connor have been doing over there. It's been a long time coming, like we said, but it'll finally be out for everyone to see, and it was great to have you on. And of course, thank you so much, everyone, for listening. We again couldn't do without you. Follow us on Twitter, follow us on Instagram, TikTok, give us a like on Facebook, and subscribe on YouTube, where you can find all of our podcast episodes. And you can find those at Inside Film Room.
While we're plugging TikToks, go follow Jake as well. He's over there TikTok famous. But while you're at it, be sure to subscribe, rate, and review wherever you get your podcasts. We're on Apple, Stitcher, Spotify, Google, Amazon, anywhere you listen, we are there. And come back next week for episode 100. It's going to be great. Maybe some special guests. Who knows? It's going to be fun. Just be here. We'll see you then.